Good evening, everybody. Just hang tight. We'll get started right on time. Looking forward to our presentation. If everybody just wants to use this time right now before we begin to grab a piece of paper and a pen, there's going to be plenty of notes to take during tonight's conversation. Also, take a moment to use the restroom, put away any potential distractions. We've got a lot of great content to cover. So get yourselves ready, buckle in. We'll be getting started in just 2 minutes. All righty, it looks like it is now 7 o'clock here in Denver, Colorado. Good evening to you wherever you are. Looking forward to the class tonight. I'm going to do my best to respect your time. My name is Matthew Pillmore. I'm the president of VIP Financial Education. Want to give a quick shout out, obviously, to Mike Albright and the crew over there at FlipNerd. They do a fantastic job. Make sure you visit their website at flipnerd.com for all these valuable resources. I'm an avid student myself, been a lifelong apprentice, if you will. And I like it when my time is respected. So I'm going to do my best to cram as much content in the next 45 minutes to an hour as possible. And tonight's class is known as How to Own Rentals with No Mortgages. Our objectives this evening first will be to spend just 2 or 3 minutes telling you a little bit about VIP if you're unfamiliar with who we are. Want to make sure you have a proper introduction. Then we're going to dive into how to obtain unlimited capital in order to grow your cash flow. Obviously, when you have more money, it's easier to make more money. Thirdly, we're going to talk about 3 specific steps to dominate the banks. Fourthly, we're then going to teach you how you can save over $100,000 on every rental that you buy and own. So obviously, a lot of big claims here. I want to mathematically validate these objectives. And that's the intention of this evening's class. A little bit about VIP. First and foremost, we were founded a long time ago, back in 2000. We teach tens of thousands of people every single month now. And we've become known as the leading experts on cash flow, debt, and both personal and business credit. We've now taught in over 25 countries. And we're here to help jumpstart you with not just tonight's class, but also what's known as a cash flow cruncher, which is a free gift we're going to award every participant of tonight's class by the end of the training. The training that we did for FlipNerd a month ago was completely packed out. We actually had to extend into tonight's class. So I do appreciate you joining, and we do want to make sure that we compensate you for your time. Additionally, and even better, you're going to use that cash flow cruncher in order to take advantage of what's known as a personal implementation coaching session. Now, this is the second part to the training. It's completely customized, and we'll show you how the techniques that we discussed tonight apply to your specific circumstances. Now, I don't care if you own one property, maybe just your primary residence, or whether you own 100 properties. The techniques we're going to talk about do apply to you, and you can gain substantial monetary value from them, assuming you practice it. Now, to learn more about VIP, you can always visit a very simple website called About VIP Financial Education that will give you some basic information. We've built our trainings for countless organizations. Virtually anyone that is of any importance in the real estate community, we've taught our classes to. And many organizations of all sizes, even outside of the real estate community, because this works just as well for John and Jane homeowner as it does for Russ and Betty investor. We've even taught this information to companies like NASA at Johnson and Kennedy Space Centers through the Foundation for Financial Wellness, as well as the police department. We've got a great testimonial here from Jim Main, the chief of police. We do have an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau, which you can find under VIP Enterprises here in Denver. And one review I'd like to share with you is this one from Karen Myers. She says, I am the program director that's been offering the VIP debt-free education to the employees of NASA. We've received wonderful feedback and plan to increase the availability of the curriculum. In one word, awesome. I would strongly recommend this information to anyone. Karen Myers. Now, what I've learned after practicing this information religiously for the past 11 going on 12 years is that it's somewhat hard to understand. I had a financial background originally, and yet it took a while before I was able to wrap my mind around what I'm going to share with you here this evening. But on the other hand, it can be easy to execute with proper instructions. Your undivided attention is absolutely necessary. Make sure you write down your notes. Any questions that come up, make sure you jot those down, because during that second part, we will work with you one-on-one, absolutely free, in order to help customize the potential of you utilizing this information. Furthermore, we've designed a landing page at mortgagekillerclass.com. Write that down, mortgagekillerclass.com, where you can review this information, again, as many times as you want to, anytime, day or night. And that'll give you a chance to familiarize yourself with it prior to your free one-on-one coaching session. Now, there are 3 specific steps that we've created in order to beat the banks. It's not hard to agree that the banking rules are not built in favor of us, the customers. So what we want to do is try and stack the odds in our favor in order to accelerate our financial objectives. And it's done through these specific steps. The first is optimization of not just personal, but also business credit profiles. We're going to talk about that in better detail in tonight's training and as well during your one-on-one session. We're then going to leverage credit to access DWs. Now, DWs is an acronym you'll see frequently with us. It stands for debt weapons. We're going to leverage credit to access debt weapons. And I'm going to show you the power of debt weapons through tonight's training. Thirdly, we're going to utilize debt weapons to eliminate liability, grow assets, and stockpile emergency reserves in a fraction of the time you would otherwise be able to. We're then going to use the 3 techniques listed here, which will turn the banks against each other. The first is known as lump sum payments. Second is paycheck parking. And third is called cash flow stacking. So let's start with step number 1, optimization of personal FICO, which stands for Fair Isaac Company. That's the credit scoring algorithm the banks rely on to determine whether or not we as borrowers are qualified for mortgages, credit cards, auto loans, student loans, etc., as well as business credit profiles. Now, you probably have personal credit scores established already, and these scores are imperative to your success if you didn't notice already. The target score that you have to continuously work to maintain is a 760 and better. If you don't yet have a 760, that's step number one, is to constantly drive that score higher. However, the minimum credit score needed in order to accomplish the second and third steps to our process is a 700 and up. Now, if you don't yet have a 700, don't exit the call just yet. It's not a deal breaker. In fact, again, that just becomes the first priority. And there are personal credit scoring maximization solutions that are far more effective than credit repair. I was lucky enough back in 2002 to invest a large sum of money, tens of thousands of dollars, very uncomfortably, I might add. It was an incredibly difficult decision to make at that time. And what I invested in was an apprenticeship under one of the original creators of the first FICO credit scoring algorithm. Now, with his guidance, me and several members of our team managed to obtain a very rare FICO expert certification. Now, during that time and since then, we've been able to teach tens of thousands of people about personal credit scoring. So with our background, we have the ability to guide you towards steps that will allow you to manipulate your credit scoring for the better and manage to benefit from the second and third steps. So don't fret if you've got some bumps and bruises. Most people who participate in this already have phenomenal credit. The 760 Club is what allows us to do this. Let's talk briefly about personal credit scoring. Personal credit scores under the FICO algorithm, which can be found under myfico.com. That's myfico.com. It is broken into 5 components and will range from 300 to 850. The first component is payment history, and this is the one that most people are familiar with. It's determined by whether or not you pay your bills on time. However, 65% of your credit score is determined by 4 other factors, which means that with a proactive approach, you have significant control over your personal credit, leading you to countless forms of capital, which can be used for down payments, can be used for fix-up costs, can be used for vacancy costs, and can be used for asset acquisition / emergency reserves. I'm going to use a very small portion of this to show you how we can turn the banks against each other and own real estate without mortgages. Now, business credit scores are based on a system that's a little different. It will range from 0 to 100, as you can see here on the scale. And it's based only on one factor, which is how have you paid your bills over the last 12 months. If you pay your business bills as agreed or early, you'll instantly establish an excellent score of 80 or higher. With an 80 or higher, you're considered in the top of that business credit scoring scale. However, aside from the 3 credit scoring agencies, which are similar to the personal side, I found that business credit profiles make the best difference. For those of you that currently have entities, this will become a significant portion of our conversation during your one-on-one free coaching session, because some of the debt weapons that we're about to talk about next will not report to your personal credit report when you know how to access the right type, and that involves your business. So we'll talk about that. Now, as a real estate investor, you own a business. You're an entrepreneur, and you get to benefit from these tools, which are invisible, even though you will personally guarantee that they get paid back. So let's talk a little bit about debt weapons. How do we leverage great credit to access these tools? And before we get to that, what the heck is a debt weapon? First of all, debt weapons are personal and business capital accounts that will put your money to work for you nearly every day of the year. They allow us investors and business owners to rapidly improve our cash flow and our debt to income ratios, making us far more lendable, far more comfortable financially. It allows us to increase our acquisition rate, meaning we can buy more properties significantly more quickly. I've managed to grow several businesses using these techniques so much faster than I would have organically, because leverage we all agree is a key ingredient to wealth development. Leverage is very, very important, but I'm going to talk a little bit about what's been missing in our education as investors and business owners by studying books like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, where we're taught to leverage, but the leverage is paid back the way the bank asks us. What we're going to do is create our own rule book. Third, it will allow you to rapidly improve the safety of your family and your business in the event of an emergency, and your overall total debt load and interest costs will be far reduced from what you otherwise would owe. Now, we have managed to identify a total of 16 main categories or groups of these debt weapon capital accounts. Everything from mortgages here on the top left to personal lines of credit, business lines of credit, home equity lines of credit, secured lines of credit, certificates of deposit, business credit cards, consumer credit cards, etc. These are all offered in the traditional financial institutions, but a lot of research is necessary in order to understand the right debt weapon to get for the right purpose and who's currently providing that. Let's talk a little bit about that. Here on the right, you see that we've created some classes here. The ones in gold are free of charge. And as somebody that registers for their free personal implementation coaching session at the end of the training today, you will be provided your own personal access to these free classes without anything required to join. So it's we will elaborate and expound on what we're here to talk about in terms of the individual debt weapons, but today we're going to generalize regarding all of them. So let's do that now. What are the cornerstones that you have to understand in order to succeed accessing these tools? First and foremost, we answer 4 very important questions before we apply for any new debt weapon. The first is, why are we getting it in the first place? What's the purpose that we intend to accomplish by getting access to this tool or this vehicle? Once we know the answer to that question, we can answer the second and third questions, which are, great, so which one do we get? And who's providing it? Where do we get it from? The fourth and final question is, when do we apply for it? Timing with these accounts is everything, because every time we submit an application to acquire a new capital account debt weapon, it harms our credit. Now, we research this up to 20 hours every week. We have a part-time gal, that's all she does. And it's important to understand that we're never done looking for and adding more debt weapons to your collection. You have to look at it like a massive garage behind your house. And I treat these debt weapons like I treat my automobile. I rely on it every single day. Furthermore, my automobile isn't the only vehicle I rely on. I rely on airplanes. I have a scooter, I have a motorcycle. But if I wanted to go up into the mountains and take one of my vehicles off-road, some would be better than others. So that's what we're doing here, is we're pairing the students of our classes with the proper vehicles in order to accomplish the purpose. I can't reiterate that enough. We'll talk more about that during your one-on-one free coaching session. And by the way, that's 90 minutes that we're going to be giving you complimentary. That's just as a courtesy to FlipNerd. But it does require the 700 plus FICO credit score in order to start accessing between $25,000 up to $250,000 every single year in available capital. Now, this is contradictory to what some experts teach us about fiscal responsibility. In my lifetime, I've been taught on multiple occasions that it's better to reduce the amount of capital and credit that's available to me. That couldn't be further from the truth if you're capable of fiscal responsibility. If you're not, then you absolutely need to limit the number of debt weapons available to you. If you cannot control your spending, you have to limit the number of capital accounts that you have. However, just like leveraging into a mortgage to acquire a piece of real estate, utilizing these tools will assist you in doing that so much more quickly. Leverage is not the problem when you're doing it to grow your cash flow. If you're utilizing leverage for frivolous purposes, and squandering money for lifestyle reasons, most certainly minimization of available credit is a very, very important piece to your plan. Now let's talk about the next steps for those of you who feel confident in your ability to maintain fiscal responsibility. You've got to learn how to cheat the interest rates. We've all been taught that interest rates are very, very important. But if we stop and think about it, I would argue that interest rates are not the most important thing when it comes to borrowing. And who taught us that in the first place? You've got to think about your past and then change the way you've been taught, because you were taught from your parents and the banks. The school systems most certainly deprive us of the formal financial education that we deserve. Therefore, most of us have learned from sources that aren't necessarily qualified to be steering us in the direction of our own best interests. The bank's rules are obviously designed to benefit the banks. And what I'm here to argue, and what I want you to change your thoughts about, is that you actually don't care about interest rates at all. You care about the total cost of interest. You care about the total dollars and cents that are flowing out of your bank account to make payments every month. Who cares if you have a 4% interest rate on a mortgage if 75% of your payment is going toward interest? Pull your statement out and look at it. Look at your truth in lending document and refresh your memory at just how detrimental and expensive mortgage loans are to you, regardless of how attractive the interest rate appears. So let's talk about utilizing debt weapons in order to eliminate liabilities, grow assets, and stockpile emergency reserves. And we're going to, again, go through these 3 steps: lump sum payments, paycheck parking, and cash flow stacking. I want to start with real estate. However, for most people, at least 80%, we attack non-mortgage and business-related debts first. Non-mortgage and business-related debts get attacked first. However, I'm going to reverse engineer chronologically an experience we had with one of our students. Now, I like to teach this example, and the reason I do is I've found that most people can relate to Dan and Megan Albright's story in at least one way. So Dan and Megan attended a real estate class that we were teaching just north of Denver. There were roughly 100 people in the room. At the end of the class, Megan had approached me while I was loading my vehicle, and I could see the emotional impact that her money was having on their relationship and on her overall physical well-being. Her posture was hunched over. She looked like she was about to burst into tears at any point during our conversation. And she confided in me that she thought they had dug themselves a financial hole they would not be able to get out of. At this point, they were not yet homeowners. They were simply renters. And I want to show you that even when things get rough, this information can be incredibly beneficial. Now, if things are better than Dan and Megan, if your circumstances look better than this, perfect. Everything I'm about to show you will be that much more impressive when we speak over the phone. So Megan and Dan completed a cash flow cruncher, and 3 years after we were working with them, they wanted to acquire their first home. This was the truth in lending statement that was associated with their new loan of $290,000. Now, over 360 months at 5.2%, which is arguably one of the historic low interest rates we've all been appreciating over the last dozen plus years, you can see that they're going to spend $283,000 in interest. $283,000 in interest means that they're going to pay over $500,000 for this home. $573,000 to pay this loan back. That is absolutely absurd, and there are far better ways of managing this debt without interrupting the acquisition pace. In fact, the acquisition pace will be much faster by doing what I'm about to show you next. So here I've converted most of the important details from that truth in lending statement. You see here, we've got the $290,000 balance, 5.2%, $283,000 in interest costs. On the right side, you see their total debt weapon collection 3 years after we were introduced. I told you that we try and obtain between $25,000 up to $250,000 worth of these debt weapon capital accounts each and every year. And 3 years later, we had a total of 78,500, which was actually quite a bit less than we tend to get for people, but we obviously exceeded the minimum that we are shooting for. Their total net income, meaning their take-home dollars, were $5,950. Now, Dan was self-employed and Megan was W-2'd, so income fluctuated. Fluctuating income is completely normal, and so are fluctuating expenses, which means cash flow will always fluctuate also. Their total living expenses were $2,325 on average, and $1,600 for this brand new mortgage, totaling $3,925. Now, we're always going to use averages because some expenses we pay only periodically, other expenses we pay regularly. So you have to make sure that when you complete your cash flow cruncher, you rely on conservatively realistic averages. Their new conservatively realistic average cash flow position 3 years after we met had increased from $390 per month to over $2,000 a month without any change in income and no change to expenses. This requires no sacrifice to do what I'm about to show you next. Now, when we speak during your free coaching session, you will be introduced to what's known as the MLS. We will calculate your MLS for you, and that's the amount that we can safely borrow from one of these debt weapons in order to apply it towards the purpose or the objective. That could be a liability elimination objective, that could be an asset growth objective, or it could be to satisfy emergencies. So we'll calculate your MLS for you during our conversation. And in this example, the total was $20,000. $20,000. That means we can take $20,000 from the available $78,500 here. And their objective at this point was they wanted to attack and eliminate this mortgage while simultaneously investing in real estate. So they went from renting to home ownership, and eventually they want to be investing in real estate. Now, we're going to talk a little bit more about that as we move forward. I simply want to focus most of our attention this evening on what you can manage to do to beat the banks with debt that you already have, because it's not speculative. We're dealing with fact. These are agreements you've already signed and committed to. Therefore, even if you never buy another piece of real estate, whatever debt you currently have now, you have to pay back. In their case, we took that $20,000 maximum lump sum from this tool here, $25,000 available, and applied it to this $290,000 balance. Now, when we do that, what does that balance become? Well, obviously it drops by about $20,000 to $270,000, and you can see the balance over here on the right increases by $20,000, meaning they don't have any more debt or any less debt. We've just balanced the debt differently. Now, they now have a realization that has to be accepted in order to change their behavior permanently. This realization is that the most standard and commonly used banking tools are a bunch of crap. They're built to benefit the banks, known as your checking and savings accounts. Now, most people who earn an income have that money deposited directly into their bank, either direct or manually, and it sits there until it's needed throughout the month. When bills come due, bills get paid. By the end of the month, there should be a surplus known as positive cash flow. And for many people, that money will stay in savings of some form, monetarily benefiting the banks. If you do your research regarding fractional reserve, it will educate you about the exponential lending power the banks have based on every dollar you deposit into checking and savings. If the bank can lend out up to 9 times what you deposit and collect interest from all of these other borrowers, shouldn't you be entitled to some of that interest? I hate to break it to you, but that's just not the way it works. In fact, the banks pay such an insultingly low rate of interest on money in your checking and savings accounts that most people don't even put it on the cash flow cruncher. Instead, what we're going to do is employ this money as much as 100% of the year versus it sitting idly working only for the banks. We want it working for Dan and Megan. So Dan and Megan will start paycheck parking their income. It will pass directly through their checking and savings against the $20,000 balance on the debt weapon. 20 to 28 days of the month will go by, and during that time, that money is working for them, maximizing their cash flow, reducing compounded interest, compressing amortization schedules, and maximizing their credit scores. And by the end of the month, they will then use that debt weapon again to pay all of their bills. They'll simply repeat this process every single month. So let me demonstrate it here for you. They have this $20,000 debt weapon balance. When this income came in prior to utilizing this education and meeting us here at VIP, they would deposit that money into checking and savings just like anybody else. And instead, we're going to take that money and deposit it against this debt weapon balance. If you're not following along at this point, it's perfectly okay. Make sure you go back to mortgagekillerclass.com and watch this over and over until it registers. We'll also be able to dive in with your own specific circumstances during the free coaching call. So don't worry if you're not fully grasping this. It can be tough to learn. This $5,950 deposited against that debt weapon reduces that average daily balance throughout the month, meaning they pay significantly less interest on average while they're carrying a balance on this tool. And that money's still sitting available. So you can see that this balance here drops from $20,000 to $14,050 based on the averages. Now, at the end of the month and throughout the month, they have their bills and expenses that come due. So they're going to pay that $2,325 of living expenses. This includes everything, folks. This includes food, gasoline, insurance costs. It includes cosmetics. It includes entertainment. It includes utilities. All of your expenses should be averaged into this amount. You might spend $2,000 per month on average, but you might spend $5,000 per month on average. You have to be aware of what that number is. We're not here to ratchet back or create a budget. What we're doing is creating a very sophisticated strategic spending plan. So they'll pay their $2,325. Now, in month number one, they don't have another mortgage payment because they've already given $20,000 from the debt weapon to the balance on the mortgage. So they only have the living expenses. Now, that means at the end of month one, the new balance on that debt weapon will total approximately $16,375. Month number two, they paycheck park again. Throughout the month, as income comes in, it's passing through checking and savings and gets parked against the debt, preventing compounded interest, reducing that balance at the end of the month if they had no expenses to approximately $10,425. Now, because they have expenses and interest costs associated with the $20,000, they have to pay those throughout the month, totaling $3,925, because in that second month, they do have to pay their mortgage payment again. So by the end of the second month, that new balance totals approximately $14,350. It's very easy to complete the rest of what we call this, which is a cycle. It's very easy to complete the rest of this cycle. I can simply take this remaining balance, and because every single month, this increased cash flow position remains parked against the balance, I can simply divide this balance by the existing cash flow position to determine approximately how many months are left, which is 7.1 months. Now, let's go ahead and add in the first and second month that we walked through here, month one and month two. So we're going to add those 2 months to the remaining 7.1 for a total of 9.1. And we're also going to add in half a month's worth of interest costs associated with this tool. I'm going to make this a 10% rate, which is not uncommon. The hardest part for me to understand when I was learning this for the first time over 10 years ago was, how do we take a higher interest tool to pay off a lower interest tool and save interest costs? It didn't make sense. The answer is in the term. Over this period of 9.6 months, they've managed to pound down over $20,000 worth of principal. And I'm going to show you just how powerful this is. For those of you who are unfamiliar, this is known as an amortization schedule. It's one of the most insidious devices ever created by mankind, because here's the interest and here's the principal. Now, according to the National Association of Realtors, borrowers will either refinance or sell and get a new purchase money mortgage every 3 to 7 years, which means we're stuck here in the almost all interest portion of a mortgage. In Dan and Megan's case, we were able to extract $20,000 of money that wasn't even theirs to apply it towards this mortgage in the very first month, which meant that they were able to basically jump into a time machine and fast forward their way, leapfrogging down the amortization schedule by almost 4.5 years, eliminating significant amounts of interest, which I'll show you here in a moment. They follow this process until this entire mortgage has been eliminated. Now, simultaneously to this process will gain momentum as they continue to invest in additional income producing assets. In their case, that was real estate. In my case, that's both businesses and real estate. It does not slow this down, it speeds it up. And the more money I get in these capital account debt weapons, the more I have to invest in those tools in order to drive cash flow higher. Let me show you what it looks like with just the one property. Now I'm going to go ahead and screen share one of the cash flow crunchers. Give me one moment here. I'm going to go ahead and screen share a cash flow cruncher. Now, this is the tool that you will be provided when you reserve your free coaching session. And by hanging out until the end of tonight's training, which I won't take a whole lot more of your time, you'll be provided a personal invitation link that you can go to immediately tonight. It'll be your only chance to do this, where you'll get your own free coaching session. Now, when you reserve that, you'll get a confirmation email with this cash flow cruncher attached. It's a very, very special spreadsheet. It's one that contains many formulas that you will not find in any other spreadsheets that will be incredibly important to your real estate investing, including but not limited to loan to values, target rates, utilization ratios, credit scoring, etc. So you'll go ahead and fill this basic information out: revenue and assets, the debts page where you've got mortgages, lines of credit, auto loans, credit cards, etc. Very basic information. It will not ask for any account numbers or your social security number, so your financial health will always be protected. It will ask for personal expenses. You can generalize this if it's easier, where you just bulk everything together. Otherwise, the more detailed you are, the more useful we will be to you. It will include a business expenses spreadsheet. Now, if you have a very successful business where you treat it like its own ecosystem, its own financial ecosystem of income and expenses, then you'll want to fill out 2 cash flow crunchers. You can just simply save the spreadsheet as, and you can create one for the business and one for the household. Now, here on the loan calculator page, let's take a look at Dan and Megan's circumstances here. We've got this new mortgage of $290,000 at 5.2%, and you can see the $283,000 worth of interest indicated here over 360 months. Now, you can see the payment was $1,592. We rounded that up to be conservative in the example as well as to simplify. And in month number 1, we gave how much? $20,000. Now, we took this from a debt weapon. And I do want to point out that I'm going to put this on payment number 3 versus payment number 1, because payment number 3 will show you very clearly the benefit of leapfrogging across principal. If you take note here on the right, Dan and Megan are going to pay ultimately close to 4-to-1 interest to principal as they start this 5.2% loan. That's absolutely ridiculous. Furthermore, you can see the increase of principal each month is only going up by a total of approximately, what are we looking at there, guys? 47 cents, somewhere in that vicinity. So clearly, they're not going to make very good headway. In fact, if I were to scroll down even 100 months, they're still going to owe $248,000. So this is why banks do so well, because they can confuse us by giving us an interest rate that looks very, very good, but in the long run, they're going to ultimately end up cashing in. Now, when they give this $20,000, take a look at what happens here. Instead of increasing by only 47 some odd cents, they're going to jump from $337 in principal all the way to $426, eliminating, as I'd mentioned before, almost 4.5 years of this loan with one move, saving just under $65,000 in interest, folks. $65,000. How quickly were we able to pay back this $20,000 lump sum through the paycheck parking methodology? 10 months, 9.6 months. I'm going to round it up to 10 to be conservative. I'm going to go from payment 3 to payment 13, which is when that $20,000 is paid back and we can recycle that debt weapon and do this all over again. They then apply another $20,000 here. And look at this. In just 2 moves, literally within the first 11 months, 13 because I just put this on the third payment, they could have saved $110,000 off the price tag of this home. Guys, if I had a room of 1 million investors and I asked everyone if every single property in your local area was $75,000 cheaper, would you be more active in real estate? 1 million out of 1 million investors would say yes. But nobody tends to look at it from the reverse. We go in and just gradually accept the banking rules. These rules aren't firm. We can create our own rule book. Look at this. I'm going to go down another 10 months and do this again, another 20,000. We're almost at $150,000 reduced off the price tag of this home. If that doesn't get you excited, you lead a far more exciting life than I do. Now let's go ahead and take a look again at the overall results if they were to follow this process to completion. That original $283,000 becomes $72,000 in interest, $72,500 in interest versus $283,000. Folks, that is $210,000 saved by following this process. And even more exciting to some people is that was that Dan and Megan are able to save over 21 years off of this loan. Forget about the bi-weekly mortgage payment. It's ridiculous too. You've been bamboozled into thinking that the only options that are there are the ones that are going to be the ones that benefit the banks the most. That's not true at all. The best news about this is that it works for all types of debt. It doesn't matter what your debts are. Non-mortgage and business-related debts are usually attacked first, and we do that by analyzing these 4 categories: credit, cash flow, debt, and debt weapons. There are 17 components that we use to keep credit scores excellent, 34 techniques that we use to optimize cash flow, 28 that we use to reduce debt far more quickly, and 16 categories of debt weapons that we talked about before. The only reason I bring this up is because there are millions of combinations as to how these directions and roadmaps will be created. It's almost like a GPS. You don't have the same roadmap as anybody else on the entire planet when it comes to when you leave your home in the morning and your daily routine throughout the day. And the same is true here. You are a financial fingerprint, and we have to show you how to customize this for yourself to prevent you from getting either A, lost, or B, in a lot of trouble. So we've got to make sure that you don't end up setting yourself back years by doing this wrong. There are a lot of things that we have to consider when we want to eliminate non-mortgage debt quickly. The first thing that we consider, though, is what's known as target rate, which is your payment divided by your balance owed. We also look at the type of accounts and the impact of credit scores. And finally, we look at the interest rates. We always look at the interest rates last. The primary interest rate that I concern myself with is 0% because that's free money. Anything above that has an equal target on its back. So we're going to be looking very closely at things that you probably never looked at in the same way that we will together. And it should change the way that you think about money in banks for the rest of your life. Now, let's talk about the outcome of Dan and Megan's story. And then we're going to go ahead and give you guys that link so you can register for your free coaching session and we can start talking specifics, which is a lot more important to you, obviously, than Dan and Megan's story. Dan and Megan, when they first came to us, had almost $50,000 worth of non-mortgage debts. This is why Megan was so distraught. She was concerned that they would never pay it off. And I have to agree that if their behavior didn't change with a $390 starting cash flow position, the chances of them being non-mortgage related debt-free, in my opinion, were slim to none. I'm just not that optimistic they would have ever been out of debt. They had a 668 starting credit score, and we used the same techniques I just walked through on the mortgage. In the first cycle, we were able to pay off in 12.7 months In the second cycle, we paid off that lump sum amount in just 10.2 months. And in the third cycle, attacking the remainder of this $50,000 or $49,000, we were able to pay it off in 8 months for a total of 30.9 months to eliminate nearly $50,000 in non-mortgage debt. Guys, I can tell you right now, after having done this so many times, I'm not sure anybody feels they would have ever paid this off in under 10 years without a change of behavior, much less under 3. Their new credit scores, 781. So take a look at where they became or where they grew to the point where they were buying their first home. Same income, all their non-mortgage debts are gone, credit scores are phenomenal, their cash flow position was through the roof, almost 5 times better. In fact, their debt weapon availability had grown substantially and their lendability improved as well. So nothing about this slows them down from investing in real estate more quickly. So how do you benefit? What's next, guys? Well, every household is different. So you've got to understand what solutions are available to you, and then you've got to remain consistent. And we've reviewed countless programs for you. We found things that are free, similar to the education and the free coaching session we're going to give you, all the way up to the $50,000 programs that are available through companies like Robert Kiyosaki's or Fortune Builders. Guys, you don't need all of that right now. Just start with baby steps. Take advantage of everything that's free so that you can benefit as much as possible and make sure that you're making the right financial decisions. Here's a deal breaker. There's a few deal breakers here where we can't help you. If you earn less than $6,000 more than you spend every year, meaning if your cash flow is less than $500 per month, you need to wait to take advantage of the free coaching session that we're going to provide. All of our most popular techniques are going to be on standby until you have at least $500 per month positive cash flow. Should not be very difficult for most of you. And if it is difficult for you, keep in mind that this is a very urgent time for you. It's dangerous to be less than $500 positive cash flow. Next, are you capable of taking action if shown how? And does the solution have proven results as well as a positive reputation? Make sure you're doing your research. I would go online and just Google search VIP financial education to see what you come up with. Also, is it going to push you further than you can push yourself? Guys, if you don't understand the benefits of coaching, why in the world would you take advantage of that free coaching session? Coaching is inevitably going to push you further than you can push yourself unless you're just not coachable. Show me one person of excellence, one athlete, one professional business person, somebody at the top of their game who's not surrounded by coaches. If you want to succeed, you have to become coachable. And that was difficult for me, but I managed to accomplish it. And it's still not easy, but I push myself through the discomfort knowing that I have to emulate what those who are more successful than me are doing. Next, you have to understand whether or not you're going to get a strong ROI. Look at Dan and Megan as an example. They invested $4,500 to partner with us in our coaching membership. Now, not everybody's going to have an opportunity to do that. In fact, about 60% of people we speak with are disqualified. I have to warn you that we have substantially more demand than we have supply. We have substantially more demand for what we provide than we have supply. So you've got to be prepared for us to turn you away, but we're not going to turn you away for the free session. We're going to give that to everybody. When they applied the first step against their mortgage, not counting the $50,000 that we paid off in non-mortgage debts, it saved them $64,000 in interest. Would you consider that a great return on your investment? If not, please call me and tell me where you're investing your money, because I can't find anything comparable to this. Their second step, another $46,000, and over 8.5 years, over $210,000. Obviously, their investment in a better plan paid off for them. Finally, I think it's very important to ask whether or not a company will refuse a sale. Most of these real estate investor specific products and services are ready and willing to sell absolutely anybody in the room. And I think you've got to be careful to only work with people who are willing to disqual. And finally, does a company stand behind your success? If I'm going to work with somebody who promises me results and I'm willing to take action and I follow through on my part, if it doesn't work, what are they willing to do about it? Make sure that that's a question that you consider before you invest in any solution. So when I give you this website link coming up here next, you're going to get your cash flow cruncher emailed directly to you. It will come right away. We're going to use the free tool to accelerate your goals by reviewing your starting point and where you want to end up, and then reverse engineering the best techniques and the potential that you have to fill in gaps that you're currently missing from your plan today. As I mentioned before, your privacy is a top priority for us. So you do not have to provide us any dangerous financial information at all, just generics. As long as you stay disciplined and accountable, this cannot fail for you. It's mathematically guaranteed to work. This is not speculative as long as you already have these massive debt loads in the form of mortgage and non-mortgage related balances. Now, for those of you who are qualified and ultimately end up benefiting from a coaching relationship with us, you're delegated a coach over a period of 24 months. You work with the same certified expert coach. We have not hired a coach since 2009, which is why our demand is so much more substantial than our supply. And your coach will supply you on the left of your cash flow cruncher a collection of homework assignments following each coaching session. And on the right, you will put the result and then schedule your next call. You can get coached once a week if you feel it's beneficial. Most people get coached just once every 3 to 4 weeks in order to get phenomenal results. We also help handle imperfect credit scores to those who do not yet have the 700 minimum. And this is a $1,500 value that we provide for free to all members. So for those of you who are curious about the price tag, this is tax deductible for those of you who own your own businesses. The 2-year membership is just $289 per month, which is a fraction of what you're paying in interest. And rebates and discounts may apply, especially since you are participating as a guest of FlipNerd. So we'll talk a little bit about that during your free coaching session, provided that it makes sense for you. As I'd mentioned before, 60% of people won't even make it that far. We do also offer a satisfaction warranty where we guarantee with a refund your satisfaction. Now, for those of you that do own businesses, which should be all of you, we do also provide marketing materials for free, including professionally produced videos, logo and business card design, professionally designed brochures, as well as social media assistance. So this is an incredibly valuable relationship when it makes sense. Now, either way, you're going to get tremendous value from this free coaching call. I can't even remember the last time where somebody attended one of these free coaching sessions and felt as if it was not a good use of their time. And it's going to be, there's an opportunity right now to get your free session with me, the president of the company. For whatever reason, that seems to be important and exciting to some people. Otherwise, you'll be put with one of our certified expert coaching liaisons that will be able to walk you through this process. All of them have been with us for at least half a dozen years, so you're not going to be partnered with some amateur newbie. Everybody is excellent. It's a free, no sales, no pressure, personal game plan phone coaching session. That's available to anybody, regardless of where you live in the world. We will then provide you free classes about debt weapons, as well as your free cash flow cruncher. And as I'd said, that will be sent immediately following scheduling. So the first 5 people that register from tonight's training will be able to get coached by me, the president. Simply visit freecoachingcalendar.com. That's freecoachingcalendar.com. You can do that now, conveniently from your smartphone, or you can always call 866-969-2738. However, by reserving your place online, you are certain to get in and be one of the first 5 and get your call with me. Now, as I'd mentioned, that's 30 to 90 minutes. More often than not, we're closer to 90 than 30. It really just depends on how much I'm able to help you. By just using these techniques myself, guys, I've managed to drive our current cash flow position to over $40,000 in my household monthly. I cannot speak highly enough about this. I don't have to teach these classes to worry about an income. I have complete freedom of choice, which is what I think all of us are working towards, is creating a way of choosing how our time is spent. And I want to try and provide some of that for you. I can't be more passionate about this than I already am and have been now for going on 10 years. It took me about the first year or two of really religiously practicing this in order to to develop the type of dependency and desire to share it with the rest of the world that I have now. But that has not only not waived, it's actually increased year after year after year. So I'm very excited to spend some time with you. Again, go to freecoachingcalendar.com to get your free coaching session. This will be available only one time. And I really appreciate your time here tonight, guys. It looks like we were able to wrap up in just about 52 minutes. So hopefully you're able to get back to your evening and enjoy time with your loved ones. Until we speak during your free coaching session, you make it a great night. Thank you very much.